The Cultural Revolution, formerly the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution, was a violent socio-political purge movement in China from 1966 until 1976. Launched by Mao Zedong, chairman of the Communist Party of China. Its stated goal was to preserve Chinese communism by purging remnants of capitalist and traditional elements from Chinese society, and to reimpose Mao Zedong thought as the dominant ideology in the CPC. The revolution marked Mao's return to the central position of power in China after a period of less radical leadership to recover from the failures of the Great Leap Forward, which contributed to the Great Chinese Famine only 5 years prior. Launching the movement in May 1966 with the help of the Cultural Revolution Group, Mao soon called on young people to bombard the headquarters and proclaimed that to rebel is justified. In order to eliminate his rivals within the CPC and in schools, factories, and government institutions, Mao charged that bourgeois elements had infiltrated the government and society with the aim of restoring capitalism. He insisted that revisionists be removed through violent class struggle, to which China's youth, as well as urban workers, responded by forming Red Guards and rebel groups around the country. They would begin to hold struggle sessions regularly and grab power from local governments and CPC branches, eventually establishing the revolutionary committees in 1967. The groups often split into rival factions, however, becoming involved in violent struggles, to which the People's Liberation Army had to be sent to restore order. Having compiled a selection of Mao's sayings into the Little Red Book, which became a sacred text for Mao's personality cult, Lin Biao, vice chairman of the CPC, was written into the constitution as Mao's successor. In 1969, Mao suggested the end of the Cultural Revolution. However, the revolution's active phase would last until at least 1971, when Lin Biao, accused of a botched coup against Mao, fled and died in a plane crash. In 1972, the Gang of Four rose to power and the Cultural Revolution continued. After Mao's death and the arrest of the Gang of Four in 1976, the Cultural Revolution finally came to an end. The Cultural Revolution damaged China's economy and traditional culture, with an estimated death toll ranging from hundreds of thousands to 20 million. Beginning with the Red August of Beijing, massacres took place across mainland China, including the Guangxi massacre, in which massive cannibalism also occurred, the Inner Mongolia incident, the Guangdong massacre, the Yunnan massacres, and the Hunan massacres. Red Guards destroyed historical relics and artifacts, as well as ransacking cultural and religious sites. The 1975 Banqiao Dam failure, one of the world's greatest technological catastrophes, also occurred during the Cultural Revolution. Meanwhile, tens of millions of people were persecuted. Senior officials, most notably Chinese President Liu Shaoqi, along with Deng Xiaoping, Peng Dehuai, and He Long, were purged or exiled. Millions were accused of being members of the 5 black categories, suffering public humiliation, imprisonment, torture, hard labor, seizure of property, and sometimes execution or harassment into suicide. Intellectuals were considered the stinking old ninth, and were widely persecuted. Notable scholars and scientists such as Lao Shi, Fu Lei, Yao Tongbin, and Zhao Jiuzhang were killed or committed suicide. Schools and universities were closed with the college entrance exams cancelled. Over 10 million urban intellectual youths were sent to the countryside in the Down to the Countryside movement. In 1978, Deng Xiaoping became the new paramount leader of China and started the Boluan Fanzheng program, which gradually dismantled the Maoist policies associated with the Cultural Revolution and brought the country back to order. Deng then began a new phase of China by initiating the historic reforms and opening up program. In 1981, the Communist Party of China declared that the Cultural Revolution was responsible for the most severe setback and the heaviest losses suffered by the party, the country, and the people since the founding of the People's Republic. In 1958, after China's first 5-year plan, Mao called for grassroots socialism in order to accelerate his plans for turning China into a modern industrialized state. In this spirit, Mao launched the Great Leap Forward, established people's communes in the countryside, and began the mass mobilization of the people into collectives. Many communities were assigned production of a single commodity, steel. Mao vowed to increase agricultural production to twice that of 1957 levels. The Great Leap was an economic failure. Many uneducated farmers were pulled from farming and harvesting and instead instructed to produce steel on a massive scale, partially relying on backyard furnaces to achieve the production targets set by local cadres. The steel